my philosophy of it is that we use textiles all the time. And
Hmm.
so, and through the design, I mean, it's certainly not a new thing to use floral motifs or animal motifs in design. That's like been since time immemorial of humans doing design, I think. But for me, it's about using textiles and fabric and design to sort of enhance the appreciation of the natural world.
Hi, Tallulah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Same here. How have you been?
I've been a little chaotic in the last few weeks. We had an incredibly crazy storm here that took out a lot of the trees in the surrounding area and blocked roads and yeah, really took power out. Fortunately, we have solar with batteries, backup batteries, so we were okay. But other people were without electricity for several days. So that kind of yeah was a fairly big deal.
Right. I mean, yeah, you were since last we spoke, I think you told me about the storm and we were trying to connect with each other, but of course, because of the storm, we weren't able to. Um, so was it like a lot of life was lost with in terms of
Oh
animals?
no, no, there was not really any life lost or even really that much damage to property or animals. It was a very, very localized event. So I live in a small kind of town, like Australian village, and it pretty much just hit our village. And it came on suddenly, like it was sunny outside. And then I looked out at about 4 p.m. and the sky had turned black. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh, that's strange. And then I went out onto the veranda here and the trees, like the wind just picked up. It was like a cyclone. And so what happened was because a lot of eucalyptus trees have been planted in this area and it's a subtropical area and it's actually should be a rainforest area, but all the trees were cleared in the 19th century. And then in the last 30 years, people planted eucalypt trees to sort of bring trees back, but they're a little inappropriate. So anyway, the wind took out a lot of these trees. So it came over power lines and it blocked roads and created a lot of chaos, but there was no damage. I don't even think there was much damage to property.
Right. Yeah, since you live really in nature, which is absolutely fascinating and beautiful. Seen some pictures of yours on Instagram and of course what you've shared.
Okay.
Um, so I mean, this has been for you living in with so close to nature has been for how long, basically?
Well, so I lived in Sydney for quite a number of years when I finished school. Like I'm originally from Sydney, but I moved up here when I was quite small. And then I moved back in 2012.
Hmm.
Um, but when I grew up here as a child, it was still nature, but it wasn't quite as much nature as it is now. It was all farmland. Whereas now there's a lot more trees. People have replanted things and it's much more kind of forest than it was before. So I've been able to witness quite an incredible change, which has been very interesting, actually.
Right.
And a kind of coming back, some of the wildlife has come back that was extinct from this area. Like we have koalas on the property. We have these small, um, they're called paddy melons. They're like a small kangaroo. We have these big lizards, like monitor lizards.
Hmm.
We have echidnas, these spiky, they're like a hedgehog, but they're an Australian version. Very special animals. And so many birds now. So that's been quite an interesting thing to watch happen over the course of my life, really, a complete change in landscape.
Right. Would you say that you have played a little part in that, like getting nature, taking care of the farm, like in a way, growing plants and trees and
Definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Well, it's interesting in this storm, some of the trees that got taken out, I planted them when I was 6 years old. like little tiny seedlings, like trees this big. My little 2-year-old sister and my dad and my uncle and I went around and planted these trees, and then they'd become like really giant trees, and then they got like taken out. So it's kind of that the cycle, the full, to see the full cycle like that is
Right.
interesting. But yeah, I've planted a lot of other trees, a lot of native trees to attract animals and feed birds and
Hmm.
other creatures.
Any specific species or animal that kind of has you've kind of befriended and kind of they come and meet you or something? Has there been something like that with some of the animals?
We have had a couple of the occasions of that. Yes, there's a bird called the Australian magpie, which is, it's not really a magpie. It's a black and white bird that's unique to Australia. It's ubiquitous here. If you go anywhere, you'll see it a lot. Anyway, these birds are incredibly intelligent, and they have a beautiful, beautiful song. And they are known to occasionally befriend humans. There's actually a film about it, a movie that was made about it. And there's been internet accounts of people with their magpies. And one day, my husband was just walking in the garden, and this young one came up to him. And then it befriended us. It became our friend. It would come into the house. It would hang upside down on my finger and let me spin it around like that. It would jump on your face and take your glasses off. And then it would go off with its
Was
family and then come back again every few days and be in the house. And it was almost speaking to you. Like the tone in its kind of call was really, really expressive. And then what happened was, because this was a juvenile one, it could only just fly, like not very well, and it couldn't really sing yet. Then it matured and could sing beautifully and could fly to the top of the trees. And honestly, we weren't good enough for it anymore. It completely snobbed us. I think it thought, you can't sing and you can't fly. Why would I want to spend time with you? And it was devastating. We would see it off there, but it wouldn't come over anymore. So, but that's nature. Like we don't attract animals with food. Like
mm,
even when that magpie would visit, I wouldn't actually feed it from my kitchen. I would go into the garden and help dig up some worms or turn over some rocks to see if there's some insects for it, but not actually give it food.
right.
And then we had the same thing with a kookaburra, which is an Australian kingfisher. It has this incredible kind of they're called laughing kookaburras because of the call that they do, which is Australia, very Australian. And it was the same again. It just started coming up onto the veranda and wasn't as interactive. They're not as, I don't think they're quite as intelligent as magpies, but it was sweet. And
Right.
I would get worms from the garden for it.
Could you recall the name of the movie that you were talking about?
I haven't actually seen it. It's an Australian film, but if you do a search for Australian film
Right.
Magpie Friend or something like that, it will come up.
Right. We will try to dig it up and then put it on in the show notes for the people who would like to watch it. So I will do that for you. So that would be for this movie. So so this is fascinating, right? Like you see wildlife and then they become like friends and then they come so close to you and it must be this must be something like a very frequent kind of an experience for you, more frequent.
It is definitely frequent. I mean, those two examples I gave you were very unusual in that these animals like came into our house and into our
Right.
life. But I mean, whenever a new animal shows up, like there's a large monitor lizard called a goanna that's just showed up recently, and it lies down on the deck next to the pool, and it looks like a dog. Like it spreads out sunning itself. And so, I mean, I don't go near it. Like I keep a bit of distance just for its privacy. It's quite small, but when it gets big, like I wouldn't go near it because they're a bit dangerous. But it's just sort of nice. I like to look at it and go, oh, it's there and it's enjoying the place. And it makes me really happy to see the animals around, like wild animals. Because this is one of the things I think people love domesticated animals. Like people love dogs and they love cats. And I do too. But the thing is, there's so many other animals, and you don't need to have an animal dependent on you to really kind of experience them and enjoy them just in their own habitat as a wild, free being.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and that's something that I just really, really enjoy. I really enjoy observing and thinking about, and if they allow me to communicate with them, great. But yeah, it's just something that's very special.
But you don't get scared about it.
Well, I'm sensible about it. I mean, I wouldn't go and try and interact with a highly venomous snake. I'd keep
Right.
my very broad distance. I'd still be interested in looking at it, but I would definitely keep much more distance than I would from, a kangaroo or a bird.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, Australia has a reputation for having really dangerous animals. I think we spoke
Right.
about this last time. But the thing is, our animals are not, we aren't prey to them. The only animal that a human is actually a source of food are the crocodiles in the far north of the country. Now they're terrifying. That's terrifying, huge crocodile, and that's not where I live. But we do have a lot of venomous snakes here, and of course people are afraid of them, and that they should be afraid of them. However, if you just keep an eye out and be aware of your surroundings when you're out in nature so that you see them or make enough noise, if it's really tall grass, they'll go away because they don't actually want anything to do with you. They see you as a threat. That's why they bite you. So it's not like they will pursue you. So
Hmm.
if that being the case, all you have to do is be really aware of your surroundings, and it's completely safe. It's
Right.
not like in other countries where you have bears or you have tigers or lions or
Hmm.
other animals that you're, or polar bears. Like those are kind of animals. That's what frightens me, when an animal will attack you because it wants to eat you.
Right. Yeah, that's when you kind of have to be very careful because I think that's where yeah, I mean they can pursue to kill you or eat you or something like that.
Yeah, or even like there might be territorial. Like the most terrifying experience I ever had with an animal was when I was in Assam, and my friends and I went on a small safari through one of the national parks, and we were in this small jeep. And my friend and I were in the very back, standing up, and we went past some elephants, and then it was quite a sort of small area, and then the elephant was in front of us, and this one, it was like a pretty big, not fully grown young male elephant, and because there were babies around, it just started coming at us. I mean, it had like this anger in its eyes, and it was running with its head forward, like running as fast as it could towards us, and the jeep driver had to just back up so fast. It was really scary. I thought for a
Oh my
moment that we
God.
were maybe going to have a really bad situation, because an elephant's a huge animal, and
Yeah.
if it decides that it wants to attack you, that's also scary. We don't have anything like that. I mean, up in the
Mm.
Northern Territory, in the north of the country, we do have buffalo, wild buffalo, that were introduced to Australia, and they can be aggressive. So again, that could be a problem there. But there's definitely nothing like that here.
Right. Well, I would use that as a segue towards India since you spoke about
Mm-hmm.
Assam.
Mm-hmm.
So when was the first time you basically traveled to India? When was the first time?
The first time I came was in 1997, I think.
Right.
Yeah, we spoke about this last time, but I actually came. I mean, I'd had a fascination with India, and I'd been practicing yoga. I started practicing yoga when I was 14 or 15, and then practiced it very, very seriously from like 18 to 21. Um, and so I hadn't been to India, and then I heard about the Kumbh Mela, and I just had this real desire to see that. When I heard about what that was, I just thought, I just want to go to that. So I booked a flight and I went to Rishikesh first and stayed there. The Kumbh Mela was in Haridwar. And then sort of I stayed in Rishikesh and in an ashram and practiced yoga. And then I would just catch the train into Haridwar for the day to
Right.
go to the Kumbh Mela,
Hmm.
which was amazing. I mean, it was incredible.
Right. So you were basically coming for a spiritual gathering, which is known as the Kumbh Mela in India. That's one of the most
Mm-hmm.
largest spiritual gatherings in the world, in a way. Um, well,
I think it
normally,
is the largest.
yes, it is the largest, is
Yeah.
what I was saying actually. So it is one of, I mean, it is the largest spiritual gathering. And of course, it's still happening till today. But that wouldn't that be like the most like the most horrifying thing for a newcomer? Like since you were, of course, in 1997, you were much younger and you were like like not knowing about the country. Of course, social media, internet was not such a big thing that
Mm,
time.
mm.
And coming to India was also normally like you go through this red flags when it comes to like, oh, don't go to India, especially being a woman. Were you not having such apprehensions about your travel to India?
No, I never really have been apprehensive about India. I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily that safe in India, but if you be really sensible and also like people in India are actually like so kind. And if you are on your own, people really look after you. I felt very cared for. I didn't
Right.
have on that trip, the only sort of mildly bad experience was generally with other foreigners, actually. Um, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it that much. It hadn't really occurred to me at that point that India might be dangerous. Somebody had warned me prior to going to the Kumbh Mela to be careful of the specific times when people rush to bathe
Right.
in the Ganga and there were stampedes that happened. So I was grateful for that advice because I had no idea about that. So I did see that happening actually and was very kept my distance.
Right.
Um, but no, otherwise it really wasn't. It didn't feel dangerous at all. It was a very festive kind of atmosphere. I mean, I was glad that I was staying in Rishikesh and then just traveling to Haridwar for day trips to the Kumbh because it was very intense. I found it very
Right.
overwhelming. So it was
Right.
nice to go back and just relax afterwards and then
Yeah,
spend a
so
day just chilling out.
yeah, I was actually going to come and ask you the same question. Like, since you're from Australia, this was your first trip, and you came directly for the biggest spiritual gathering, which obviously is intense and very crowded. How were you managing with your feeling of overwhelming, I mean, overwhelmness and kind of anxiety, or some sort of like kind of feeling misplaced or something, basically.
Well, I definitely felt misplaced. Like, I mean, I sort of wandered around the Kumbh Mela just looking, just thinking. I had no idea really what was going on or anything, but it was so overwhelmingly great as well. There was such a sort of wonderful feeling there and it was welcoming. Like, I mean, so many people go there and there's so many different types of people. It's not like there's one type of people there. So even though obviously I was a foreigner, um, but of course, there were other foreigners there as well. But it was just the intensity of all those people. Like it was kind of, I would spend one day at the Kumbh Mela and then 2 days in Rishikesh, like relaxing and coming down from it. It was just exhausting more than anything. I don't remember feeling anxious at all or
Right.
apprehensive or worried or anything. It was just tiring. It was just, yeah, it was quite overwhelming.
Right. Yeah, because normally it's very like, of course, the lifestyle, the population, everything like matters when it comes from people coming from West or some country which has not such a diverse kind of religion or cultural
Mm.
atmosphere. It becomes very difficult for someone to actually handle that kind of difference in the atmosphere when they come to India. and it becomes too much for them to handle. And especially you coming directly to the
Yeah,
like the core of everything, like the core of population, and then intensity, and noise and sound, and different kind of foods around. So I was just like, how did you not feel overwhelmed? But it was a very good plan to not stay in the epicenter of the Kumbh Mela,
yeah,
and stay around it rather, because I think that kind of helped you to kind of come out of it and then go back in when you wanted to, basically.
exactly.
Yeah,
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely.
Um, so how was your experience in a nutshell about the Kumbh Mela? What did you take back when you first came and experienced the Kumbh Mela? Any some experience that you could talk about, or something that you took back, which was
Okay,
very
well, there's two things that really stand out. The first one was that on one of the bathing days, I didn't bathe in the main area. I think it was maybe even in Rishikesh. It was in the Ganga, but it
right,
was at the moment. And holding onto the chain and dunking in the water was one of the most profoundly spiritual feelings I've ever had. I've had a few in my life, and that was the first one that was just
right,
this. I think it sort of came from the feeling of the energy that so many people are doing this right now, like that kind of energy, and then the interconnectedness of it all, and then the sort of deeply spiritual significance of the Kumbh Mela gathering and the Ganga. Um, but I wasn't really thinking, it was just profound. It was a feeling like that happened to me, which was really, really amazing. So that was for me one of the things that I took away from it. The other thing that I took away from it is completely different, and it's kind of funny. Um, so I saw these two barbers in a cycle rickshaw at Nugger barbers, I guess, that that the very
the
long
saints, yeah,
dreadlocks and yeah,
yeah,
with the ash. And one of them had been, and I'd heard about this and I was hoping to see it one day, had been meditating so long with his arm up that the arm was completely atrophied and he had really, really long nails. And the
right,
other one looked that similar to him, but he didn't have the arm. But what was really funny was that I saw them and I was kind of gawking at them because I was like, wow. And then they saw me looking at them. And then they both got a kind of ego boost. Like they saw me and they were like, and I was thinking, how can you have an ego? Why would you care about me like a silly foreigner looking at you when you've had the discipline and the spiritual kind of motivation to meditate so long with your arm in the air that it atrophies? Like it was really surprising to me because I would have imagined that someone like that would be like beyond any of
right.
that, but they really weren't in that
Okay.
look. And that really shocked me. But it was kind of it was almost a pleasant surprise because it made me realize that humans can do these things and still be human, if that makes
Yeah,
any sense.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like in my, mm,
yeah. I think when you look at saints or spiritual leaders like that, this is my personal view over it, but this is something which I feel is that everybody is on a journey basically, and
mm-hmm,
and every saint is not going to be the same, and every
mm-hmm,
saint is not going to be at that level of kind of spirituality. And
mm,
that's the truth of it. Like no matter
mm-hmm,
how much we kind of try to go around this and say no, no, but we can't defend this, or we cannot be against anyone. And I think it's up to everybody's journey. And this is where we kind of, when we look at a saint and we look at someone with in that attire and that kind of dreadlocks and things like that, we have a certain expectation basically,
mm,
which
mm-hmm,
is where we kind of sometimes those saints sometimes meet those expectations and sometimes they don't,
mm, mm.
and I think this is just our perception basically. But I don't know who they were or what kind of saints they were, but it could be that they were just enjoying that moment with you, and they wanted you to enjoy that moment. Because
Mm.
I heard someone tell me this, which is a very beautiful thing that I learned from this monk basically. And he said, you never know when a saint is giving you a certain experience for what reason.
Ah.
If he's not being true to, he's not let's say you have an expectation from a saint, and you want to make him your guru, or you get initiated by him, and but he completely makes you feel disassociated or misplaced. It could be that he knows that there is another guru who is waiting for you, so he probably is
Mm.
not allowing you to stay there with
Mm.
him. it's
Mm.
it's through him that he knows what's for your good, and he kind of pushes you away. So
Mm-hmm.
when we speak ill about those saints, like, oh, I was not associated with him, he was like that, you kind of are taking a karma on yourself
Mm.
by talking ill about that saint.
Mm.
You can you can of course choose not to be associated with that saint, but you would rather, in the Indian term, would fold your hands and move ahead, basically. Like, not really,
Mm.
neither you speak
Mm.
ill or speak good about that saint.
Sure.
You just become like a neutral, like, okay,
Yeah, okay.
that's
No, that
something that
makes
I
sense.
learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you never
Yeah. Well,
know
they, I
why,
mean, yeah, yeah.
and you
No,
never
that
know,
makes
yeah.
sense now because they certainly didn't have a bad, like it wasn't a
Yeah,
negative energy.
yeah,
And
yeah,
to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, had the interaction not been like that, I wouldn't have thought about it as much. If I had have
right,
just seen them and they were just completely distant, but now that I think about it, it was actually kind of amazing that they did interact with me. And I did think that, like, I felt good. I
yeah,
didn't feel
yeah,
bad energy. I was just surprised. I think that I
yeah.
thought that somebody like that, I would just be like invisible.
I
Like,
think when we talk about saints, we come with a preconceived notion, not just you, I'm talking about all of us. And
mm-hmm,
generally, we think that they're going to be having this attire, they're going to be serious, they're going to have this aura about them. Sometimes they are just playful like children, they're just as kids, and you never know how they are. You can never predict what they're going to tell you, what they're going to behave with you in what certain way.
mm,
So if you can't associate with a certain saint, you can't feel the connect. You rather walk away rather
yeah,
than, dwelling on the fact that they are not this type or that type, in
yeah,
and as per your entire.
mm,
But that's just my view about it. So
sure, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So and this comes from my own personal experience when I have been around saints a lot. So talking about Kumbh Mela, and I think you know about this, that I always attend the Kumbh Mela as well,
mm,
since we were talking about it. So
yeah,
and it's I do it just for the ritual of for my guru basically, and I don't go there from a personal choice. Like I started going there just for my guru basically, because we have a camp there, we serve people with food and everything. So I
mm-hmm,
just go to serve them in the camp. So for me, that was the only motive to go there. But since I
mm,
go there, I happen to have these experiences with the saints around.
yeah,
And yeah, so yeah, over the years, been in these Kumbh Melas, I think obviously when I started going, even I used to like kind of try to predict their nature or see why they're behaving in certain way.
mm,
But I think slowly and steadily, when you are with great monks around, you kind of learn the like the
mm.
the the real thing, like what's in turn like. And I'm sure there are people who like kind of fake it, but it's for them, it's for their karma basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I have seen like fake ones
Yeah.
in Varanasi. These
Right.
guys were not fake; they were definitely the
Right.
real deal.
Right.
No, I mean, no, they were definitely real,
Yeah, but
compared
I
to,
also think that
yeah.
even the fake ones, if they have worn the
Mm,
attire, I think they are on that journey. So they are on their journey to become the real saints, but maybe a little later. So they are on that level. At
Yeah,
least at
yeah,
least they are on, at least on
yeah.
that path, At least they have shifted gears from a different path to a different path, basically.
No, that's true. And they're quite playful. I've chatted to
Yeah,
them in Varanasi on the Ghats when they've asked me for money or something. I'm like, sorry, I can't, but I'll just talk to you for a while. And
right,
then we've had some really great conversations that, like, they weren't, I wouldn't say that they were proper saints, but they were on that path. But they were very self reflective of the whole thing and they weren't taking it seriously. They
right.
like it
Yeah,
was, yeah, it was very playful and quite
yeah.
fun and created like some very beautiful and fun interactions with people, just sitting there on the guts with them.
Well, just imagining that scenario that you just described, I can just imagine how that must be, in a way, a booster for anybody that even after his hands up and all that thing, he was still jovial. So this is like giving you
Yeah.
kind of a strength to face difficulties in life, basically. Like even with the adversities, he was not in a bad mood or he was not like cringing or something like that. He was playful.
No. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, he was,
Yeah.
and he was very, I mean, he it looked pretty amazing because he was
Right.
really strong and muscly and just the one arm. So,
Hmm.
I mean, his
Yeah.
physical regime must have been really something.
Yeah. And then that to connect with the mental health, with being happy still,
Yeah,
would be a very difficult combination, I feel. Um,
definitely.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it was really unexpected.
yeah. But I would like to give credit to this thought process, which I just mentioned about a saint and how they kind of behave and not to talk ill about them was with from one of my last podcast was with the monk Rishi Aradhakandaji, and he is basically
Hmm.
the one that kind of told me about this in the podcast, basically. So I would like to give him
Oh,
that credit.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so did my guru in a way always mentioned since we read about it. He's not in his physical presence, but since we read that, he always said that even if you see a donkey wearing an attire of a saint, please don't talk
Mm,
bad about him. Like
okay.
try to fold your hands, just like kind of
Yep.
pay your respect, bow your head down, and just move away. Don't
Mm,
You don't have to
mm,
be close to them. You don't have to go and pray to them. You don't have to like kind
mm,
of
mm.
be a devotee or something, but just don't talk bad about them.
Yeah,
I think I take that away from that. So yeah, but that was great. I think those two things that you mentioned are really amazing, even though they have two different spectrums. But I'm sure you're gonna. So talking about Kumbh Mela, I think you do have a plan to come, which we will talk about this in the end of the episode.
hmm, hmm,
But just to kind of shift gears a bit here, would like to talk about your work and
hmm.
how you got into fabric designing and what made you come into the world of designing fabrics and what do you do so that people who are hearing this they can know a little bit about your work as well.
Okay. So, well, I'm primarily an embroidery artist. But I work with computer embroidery with my own machine. So I do all the designs myself. I draw them and then I take them into my embroidery program and then redraw them stitch by stitch. I've always loved textiles, like ever since I was a child, and it didn't come till later. I have a degree in fine arts, which started the artistic process, but I also have a degree in science in natural, so it's microbiology, but I did a lot of ecology and um, biology within that. So it's a very weird path. But it's my philosophy of it is that we use textiles all the time. And
Hmm.
so, and through the design, I mean, it's certainly not a new thing to use floral motifs or animal motifs in design. That's like been since time immemorial of humans doing design, I think. But for me, it's about using textiles and fabric and design to sort of enhance the appreciation of the natural world, really. So I design a lot of flowers. I design extinct animals, endangered animals, or I just try and observe nature and sort of create pieces that are sort of conversation pieces, not just design.
Hmm.
So, like, I do napkins that have all different native bees on them because there's 20,000 different species of bee in the world. And
Wow.
so I've made 20 different bees, and they're beautiful bees. They're all different colors, and they have different lifestyles. Some of them are solitary, some of them are in hives, some of them carve holes in wood to make nests, some of them cut neat little pieces of leaves and wrap them to make a nest. Others use resin to make a nest. Like,
Oh,
there's this incredible diversity. Um, so, but because they're very beautiful, it's very easy to use them in design. So this is the kind of thing that I try and work with. Visually, I like to make my pieces appealing. They're usually quite sentimental. So people will look at my things and someone will have some connection to a particular animal or flower or something, or they'll know somebody that does, and they'll like, oh, I have to have that, or I have to buy that. That's the perfect gift for this person because I know they love that bird. And um,
yeah.
yeah, and then the other approach I have, of course, when I go to India is I work with artisans that do handwork because I have just a deep love and appreciation for the history and skill involved in that, and the beauty of the diverse textiles that you can get there. And sometimes I do collaborations where I do my ideas in embroidery or block printing, and then I work with artisans to kind of realize those ideas.
Right. So it seems like there is an entire different galaxy of bee. I mean, there's another entire galaxy for bees, basically. There is a different universe for them. Like you just mentioned 20,000 different type of bees, I think. Um,
Yeah. There's 20,000 different types of bees. And I mean, I saw a documentary. I observe them, so I look up close and I get to see them. But I saw this incredible documentary about this guy. He's a cinematographer, and during COVID, he wasn't working, so he created this bee hotel where, like, made a structure to encourage bees, and then did all this filming, like micro close-up filming, and observed. And it was like the bees are so much more intelligent. They had personalities. They had different tactics. Some of them were more aggressive. Some of them were much more diplomatic. And then you also have cuckoo bees that they don't make their own nests. They put their eggs in the other bees' nests, and so the other ones are trying to fight these ones off, and then they're there waiting. And there's this whole thing going on. But because his cinematography was so amazing. It was like really close ups of the bees' faces. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it. Or it was British, and I saw it on TV
mhm.
somewhere when I was in Europe in a hotel room. Um, I mean,
Right.
I had already done the bees and done a lot of research with bees, so I already knew quite a lot about them. But this was it was the most, because it was so intimate with the bees that it really made you appreciate them as living creatures that
Mhm.
have almost emotions,
Mhm.
definitely ways of thinking and individual personalities.
Right.
Because people don't think like that about insects at all. They think of them as alive, but don't really pay that much attention to their sentience at all.
Right. Yeah. Apart from a movie called Ants, I don't even know if
Oh
that's
yeah.
associated with this thought process. But yes, I think that brings me to this notion that when you're talking about textiles and your designs, it is very again close to nature, which is again something which is what you're living your life as, being in nature
Mm-hmm.
and being associated with nature. So would you say that it was nature that got you towards this kind of fabric designing, or was it the other way around?
The nature part definitely came first.
Right.
Because as a child, I used to roam around the forests and the rivers uh, the textiles came later. I'm not really, to be honest, it's sort of a weird, sort of complicated thought process that got me to this point of view. And then thinking, I mean, on a more philosophical level, which ties into textiles and design, when you think about it, for instance, one of my theories is that like humans love beauty. That's why we design things. That's why we adorn ourselves. We make beautiful houses, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But nature does this as well. And I find it really interesting the intersection when that sort of started and how that progressed. And for instance, the peacock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You think about the peacock, it's prevalent in so many different types of design. For obviously in India, there's a lot, and then in the Middle East, Persia, there's a lot, and then even in Japan. And thinking about the peacock, it's kind of like that's a fairly domesticated bird that is just so outrageously, magnificently beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wonder if earlier humans would have witnessed the peacock and sort of witnessing that kind of beauty made them sort of switch and wanted to create that kind of thing or replicate that. Um, like, is that part of the connection to our desire to have design, to make things beautiful? Like, is it more specific animals, like such as the peacock or the lotus flower, these like
Mm-hmm.
incredibly beautiful things that then you know they become spiritual and religious, and as well as just beautiful for their own sake. So I find that really interesting. And then like I like to go to museums and read books on really, really ancient designs and textiles and kind of look at what motivated people in the past and how
Right.
it came about. Um, yeah, and there's a lot of things just are kind of timeless. They just keep
Right.
being beautiful. Whereas other things, like for instance, bees, I feel like bees are really under recognized in the whole of design, in the whole history. You see it a little bit. There's a little bit of design in bees
Mm-hmm.
in ancient Egypt and occasion in Japan. So occasionally you'll see a bee represented, but you always see butterflies and you always
Yeah.
see dragonflies. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I think bees are a little more like, sh in a way, maybe not compared to butterflies, is because I think bees have this tendency to sting you, so they kind of keep it away from they kind of have this
yeah,
willingness, kind of like people have this perspective about them, which is more like not so beautiful, in a
that's
way.
true.
Yeah,
It's
but
true. No, that's true. Yeah, there was a whole, I read, because I got right into the whole history of bees, and in ancient China, it appears that initially bees were treated through design and even in literature and everything, they were as like a nemesis. They were like kind of hated and feared.
right,
But then people learned how to cultivate them and get their honey.
right,
And then that all changed once they knew how to, because you smoke them out and you can
yeah,
get the honey out without getting stung. Once they figured that out, the whole perception of it kind of
yeah,
changed.
right.
Um,
Yeah, they kind of
yeah.
have this thing called bee farming. I think that's what you called it,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Um, But getting back to textiles and your design, so since they're very close to nature, would you say that you kind of course, we do have certain pictures from your Instagram where we see your designs and how you do them. Um, is it more like a boutique business, or is it more like you would like to mass produce these things in the future? Because as of now, I think it is more like a boutique business where you design a few designs
Yeah.
and then you kind of roll them over in few quantities
Yeah.
and supply them. So is it more like going to be the same process for you forever, or you think you want to like shift gears into more into mass production or get into big domestic supplies or big
Um,
supply chains?
I probably wouldn't want to get too big because of the sustainability aspect of it. It's, I mean, I will happily go as big as I can while remaining kind of ecologically sound. It's just when you talk about textiles and mass production, it's one of the worst polluters in the world, and overconsumption. I mean, Australia is the largest consumer per capita of clothing. I can't remember what the statistics are, but it's crazy how many kilograms of clothing we buy every year. Um, I don't I wouldn't want to be part of that.
Right,
I'm very much of the ethos of buy less, buy quality,
right,
and keep it. Like, so, I mean, at the moment, I would go a little bit more, scale it up a little bit more, and find a way that it's a little bit more affordable. Some products at the moment, my products are really expensive. So they really are only for people who have pretty decent disposable income. I mean, they're luxury items, they're not necessities by any
right,
means. I mean, people do tend to buy one little thing that they can afford rather than a set, but I potentially would do something. Well, this is part of the reason for working with block print, was to actually scale it up a little bit, still keeping a kind of handmade, keeping it boutique. It's not exactly mass production, but you can certainly produce like meters of block print fabric for a
right,
much more reasonable price than embroidery.
right. Would you like to delve in a little bit about the process? So, like when you talk about block printing, do you like kind of have your own designs that have been um, kind of made a blueprint into a block and then printed on your textile?
Yeah. Yeah. So I do my own designs.
Right,
Uh, I mean, the way I say, like, I love traditional block printing of all different kinds.
right,
But that's not, there's plenty of people doing that. And that you can go, if you go to Jaipur and if you want, you can go into a block printer's studio and they'll have like a library of blocks that you can choose from, and you can come up with your own designs from those blocks, and you can create all the colors from them.
right,
Um, and there's plenty of people doing that, and they're doing that beautifully. So, but my thing is about designing the blocks, and they're very much not traditional. Like, they're Australian animals or Australian flowers.
right,
So they really don't look like traditional block printing at all. It's the same process,
right.
and
Of course.
it's
Yeah.
the same people working with them,
Right.
but yeah,
Your
it's my
blocks, yeah.
design.
So basically, when you make these designs and you make your block, is it also possible, like you kind of, since it's not a very, it might be a little systematic, we will get there, but do you think that when you design a block, you're like more concerned about your blocks being spread out in the market?
Well, I mean, that
Did I touch upon?
happens. That's already happened. I mean, I
Yeah,
had that happen to me. I just put an image of like my painting that I was hoping to turn into a block, and then I'd forgotten about it. I hadn't gotten around to doing that. And then a friend of mine that I'd met in Jaipur, who's from Norway, she goes there to source fabrics. And she had on her Instagram these pictures, and then one of them was my block. Like, I was looking at it, I'm like, what is that? That's my design. It's these very rare Australian animals. Like, no one would even, and it was like exactly my block. And so I thought she'd copied it from my page, but I was really shocked. And then it turned out it was a block printer in Jaipur had done it and made fabric out of it. Um, but then that's just how it works there. If you do a good block, like almost guaranteed, the next season you'll see that block in the market, like stuff cheap printed for sale. That happens to all the designers there. I mean, you don't, once you put it out there, I mean, it's a different thing. And this happens as well. Like, a friend of mine went into one of those studios, and the studios told her that this is our library, you can use them. So she put together some designs, and then this was for commercial sale. It turns out that those blocks belonged to somebody else.
oh my God,
And
yeah,
so she got sued by the people who owned that block, because copyright may not matter just on the ground in Jaipur or in India,
Yeah,
like that
but the moment they
happens.
are,
But yeah, that's a different thing. But people can alter it just a little bit. It's
yeah,
different, and I mean, it doesn't matter if because if somebody sees your block print, they can just carve the blocks to be
yeah,
pretty much the same. So
you can't have much control over it, basically.
you really can't. I think that the key to doing this kind of thing is you really have to just believe in your own work.
Right.
Um, I mean, in that sense, it's different if Temu or one of those big, like mass produced brands take a sort of smaller producer's work and slightly alter it, copy it, and then mass produce it and make huge profits off it. Um, I mean, that is not okay. I mean, it's not really okay to just outrightly copy somebody's work. I don't really condone that. But when you work in Jaipur, that's a part of life. There's no getting away from that.
Yeah, I would like to say that that also happens in the world of furniture and designing because I think that's the same thing when
Mm,
it comes to design from furniture. So you pick up something from Pinterest and you just try to kind of copy it, you can do that. And it's a very gray market in a way that things are not copyrighted or systemized in terms of design. But also I feel that everybody is inspired from a certain design from the past or a mixture, combination of a new and an old design, basically. So
yeah.
I think it becomes very difficult to kind of have a control over these things, is what I feel.
Definitely.
And I think the
Yes.
best approach is, as you said, kind of just design something and then move on to a next one for the next season so that you're one step ahead
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Definitely.
people, trying to copy you, basically like that. So as you said that you want to still keep it at a moderate, not completely a mass production, but a little bit more, like expand a little more than what it is right now, but
Yeah.
still
Definitely.
not
There's definitely room for growth.
right. And so this is also since you came in 1997 for your spiritual trip, was it also something that you kind of found out about fabric printing at that time, or you came again later for that?
Yeah, that
For
was no, that was much later. At that
Right,
time, I didn't have any idea. I had a vague appreciation for Indian textiles, but it wasn't really until I went to India in 2016 to get some embroidery done on commercial embroidery machines to get these cushions made. Um, and that was quite overwhelming because that's where I really learned about fast fashion. And this was a big factory that did mass produced fabric. Um, and then I realized after that that's not necessarily what I wanted. I'd seen some little things in India. I just started to piece it together. And then it kind of snowballed when I realized how much there was in India. And then I kind of fell in love with the crafts there. And then I started being thinking like in Varanasi, there's brocade silk that's hand loomed. In Lucknow, there's chicken curry. In the
right,
Punjab, there's bull curry. Like, and it kind of just opened up this whole world to me quite fast. And
right,
it's been a fairly rapid learning curve since then.
right,
Um, and I still don't know that much. And there's still a lot of different textiles in areas of India that I haven't even begun to explore.
right,
But then I've been going to Kutch in Gujarat, which
mm-hmm,
is a huge textile hub.
right,
So I've gotten a bit familiar with there because there's a lot of different. I mean, I went there for the embroidery because there's so many different types of embroidery, but then there's a lot of other different types of weaving and block printing, ajrak, block
yeah.
printing, and natural dyeing. That's also very big there. That's yeah, just so beautiful
Do
and
you,
so
right,
interesting.
yeah. Do you also, talking about natural dyeing, do you know the process of doing it? Like, have you tried doing it yourself, or you kind of outsource it and let them do it?
I have done like little bits just sort of in my kitchen,
Right,
natural dyeing. That's it's a world I would like to delve into. I have got plans to sort of to build a new studio, and when I do that, I'd like to set up an area that's purpose for that. Um, I mean, I've seen the process. I've definitely watched the process of indigo vats and how that works, and the fermentation process, and how many times you have to dip it to get the color deeper and richer, and then all the washing, and then the iron. They use like the rusty nails to get the iron to get the black color.
Right.
um and then there's madder root. I mean, there's a lot, and each one's
When you
kind of a
say
bit different.
when you say natural dyeing, what are the primarily used raw material in that? Like what are the basic raw material? Are they like number of like I have heard about
Yeah, so
vegetables and fruits, like the skin of the fruit or something like that. Is it like that? Because I have no idea about natural dyeing basically.
well, there is those things are usually like if you're using skins and fruit and stuff, that's usually for very small quantities.
Right.
Obviously, indigo is like a mass kind of natural dyeing, and that's indigo comes from a plant. um, and there's a whole process, like they ferment the leaves of the plant for however long, and then they have these huge vats that are a couple of meters deep, full of the fermented indigo, and they can be at various strengths, I guess. And then yeah, you get the different blues by dipping it. Like if you dip it one time, it's very light. If you dip it another,
Mm,
like it gets darker and darker. So indigo is obviously like the most famous kind of natural dye. But then yeah, like iron. Like I was saying that you just let basically you put nails into water like rusty iron, and then they
hmm.
get the iron from that. But then there's a whole lot to it, because then you have mordants, which is about uh, so that the fabric can take up the dye and hold the dye.
Right.
Because if you don't have that, it'll look like that, but then it'll just wash straight out.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah, and then there are madder root is the red dye. That's probably the other biggest, like most common kind of natural dye. Um, Beyond that, I like there's a whole range of them that I'm
Which one
not
did you say for the
100%.
red one?
Madder root?
Okay. That's another kind of a plant or a tree, I think.
Yeah, it's the root of another plant, but that's a very like in India, that's a very, very widely used
Used.
one. And then obviously like things like saffron are really
Right.
amazing
Hmm.
natural dyes, but they're pretty expensive.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There are other ones, but
Do you also
yeah,
use
I know.
charcoal for the black? Like, do you all use, I mean, do they use charcoal when it comes to black or something? Is it something like a process for that? Uh,
No, I don't. As far as I know, charcoal's not able to be used as a dye
okay.
because it's not
Because I
soluble.
used ash for a certain kind of a process in terms of painting a furniture piece. We
Okay,
wanted to do something in a very natural process because the client was basically not wanting something to be used as a chemical over the furniture.
okay,
And
okay.
he wanted some sort of an antique gray. And
Mm,
we were just thinking of ideas like how to do that. So this was just off the bat where we used basically ash from the charcoal that we put. Basically, we use the charcoal to basically kind of boil um, caustic soda because
okay.
that's used for washing old furniture and
Mm-hmm,
removing the old paints and stuff like that.
mm-hmm,
But the ash that was basically, coming out of that below the pan is something we thought we should be able to use it for a paint or something. So we were trying to
mm,
use that ash basically thing. So that's why I was asking if charcoal is something that
mm.
that you use for the color black, basically. Uh,
Yeah, no, because it's not water soluble.
right.
So for a dye to take, it's got to be soluble. Like a paint can be a sort of pigment or like a powder
Hmm.
that then gets mixed with something to make a sort of paste. But the dye actually has to take to the fabric.
Right.
Mm.
So, since oh, since you've also just mentioned that you're not someone who would like to take this into a mass production, would you call yourself more of a creative person or an entrepreneur? Like, what do you think about
Oh,
that?
definitely more of a creative person. I
Right,
mean, I am an entrepreneur because I just started something brand new from scratch and it is a business and I do make money from it. But the what drives me is the creative aspect. Like
mm,
all the kind of business side and the entrepreneurial side, I do it because I have to, not because
right,
that's what drives me to do it. Um,
right,
I mean, I really, really appreciate working for myself and just doing my thing. That to me is very, very satisfying.
right,
Um, but yeah, I'm really not much of a business person. It's
right,
that side of it's difficult for me.
right. Do you follow a certain process or a morning routine for your um, I mean, when you start the day, it's more like you have a special routine that you do, like a meditation process or something like that, or write something.
Yeah, I do. I do. I like to get up very early, and have that really quiet time in the morning. And I like to start with a cup of tea and then to do some meditation. No, I don't meditate every morning, but I do a lot. So meditating or journaling or reading, it depends kind of how I feel, but something that's focused and quiet.
Right,
And then I will do exercise. I'll do some yoga practice and I'll go for a run or I'll go for a swim.
right.
And then I'll, have breakfast and do a little bit of housework and kind of get my day started like that.
When
I
you
like
came
to have a
to
good couple of hours before starting.
today, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of gives you a booster. I think that does the same thing for
Mm,
me, and it sets the mood for the day actually. Um,
definitely.
well, normally with my travel and everything, sometimes my mornings are a bit irregular with meditation and
Mm-hmm.
things, but I
Yeah.
try to like most of the time write or write for sure and meditate for sure. Like these are the two things which I kind of 95% of the time I'm successful doing it. Um,
Mm,
yeah, and that kind of gives me a sense of stability for the day, and I think that helps me
yeah.
through the day, I guess. Um, are there any books of certain types that you really like to read? And if you would like to name a few books that have kind of inspired you, or kind of you always go back to them, or give the
Mm.
most to people?
There's quite a few.
Right.
Um, I mean, I like to read fiction and I
Mm-hmm.
also like to read philosophy. And I also like to read biographies. At the moment, I'm really into this Italian writer called Italo Calvino, who I
Mm-hmm.
think is an absolute master. He he has a sort of magical realism approach. These very, very beautiful stories that are really quite um it just captures the place and the scene so beautifully. And they're
Is
very different in the narrative. They often have like a non-linear narrative, or the magical realism kind of creeps in very subtly, like it's everything is completely normal, but then there's something that's kind of a ghost, or it doesn't quite make sense, but in the context of the story it does.
so
But
it's more
his
like a
writing is
fiction?
really beautiful.
It's
These are
fiction?
fiction. This
Okay.
is fiction. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Any sort of philosophical books that you like would like to recommend, or any kind of
i'm
philosopher that you
i'm
read
a
most?
At the moment, I'm a huge fan of Camus,
Hmm.
Albert Camus. I just a few months ago I read The Myth of Sisyphus, which is absurdism, which I is a philosophy that really resonates well with me. So Sisyphus was a Greek god sentenced. Story, but sentenced to eternally roll a rock up a mountain only to have it fall back down the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Camus' philosophy of myth of Sisyphus, the idea is that, and this is coming from a very Western viewpoint of philosophy, that life is absolutely, completely meaningless. There's
Mm-hmm.
no meaning whatsoever. And you're just Sisyphus pushing a rock up a mountain.
That will fall back. Yeah.
Yeah, just to have it fall back down. And then you do it again and again, which you could think of that as a very pessimistic view. But what Camus kind of teases apart in his book about it is that that may well be what's happening. So why not make Sisyphus happy? Learn how
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy pushing that rock up the hill, up the mountain. Learn how, and it so it's about sort of very much being in the moment and accepting the mundaneness of life as a reality, even though you know that it's completely meaningless. You
Mm-hmm.
still try and find meaning anyway. And that's what an absurdist is. It's a type of nihilism with a little more optimism. And it was interesting for me because when I read that, it resonated with me so much because, I mean, I am
Yeah.
kind of a nihilist, but I'm also an optimist. It's not a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of this optimism, even though it's meaningless, try and make the most of it anyway, which is, I mean, obvious, very obvious, but it's so
Right.
beautifully written. It's
Yeah.
so, the philosophical part of that book, it's a little heavy going when you get into it. I had to sort of, but then it's like when I read philosophy like that, there's this whole kind of moment where it's really, really dry and it's kind of laborious and I'm not even really understanding it. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but I persevere and persevere. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like osmosis. It kind of resonates and comes into me. And then in that book as well, then he had these other short stories that were fiction because Camus, a great fiction writer as well as a great philosopher. And after reading that and then reading these fictional stories that are set, he was born in Algeria and he grew up in Algeria as a French citizen. Um, and he describes the capital, I think, well, a city in Algeria called Iran and a kind of lifestyle there in these fictional stories that it's so different to anything like the climate, the weather. It's like a desert city on the
Right.
beach and the kind of attitudes of the people. And it's so poignant and so visually kind of enticing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the last I think philosophical sort of book that I've really, really enjoyed. I'll probably take a little while. I'll probably read Nietzsche again. I really like well, some of his stuff is a little bit heavy going, but when he talks about the Greek uh, different types of art
Mm-hmm.
is really interesting, and culture and the idea of like what culture is and
Mm.
yeah, like how that's created through humans and what that actually means. It's very, very good. It's very, very
Yeah.
nourishing, and it's a very nice thing to read early in the morning. I
Right.
find it's yeah. I mean, for me, I guess if I was religious, like it's probably in a way a little bit similar to maybe reading a religious text or something.
Right.
Just a
Right.
very it's a very meaningful. It's not. It's very deep. It's about existence, the meaning of life,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling that kind of deeper kind of connection to things other than
Right.
just worrying about whether you're going to have to pay this much tax or
Mm-hmm.
if there's a
Mm-hmm.
ding in your car, like
Yeah.
those kind of really trivial things. It helps put them into perspective and just keeps me very enthused
Mm.
about the world and the next step.
Right. Yeah, I can see that, because I saw a documentary on Nietzsche, which was on YouTube, which is by BBC, basically. One of the really profound documentaries that I saw, basically,
Mm,
and it had an impact over me as well. Though I want to revisit that again, that
mm,
documentary, but definitely
mm.
I would recommend that if you've not watched it.
Okay.
I would definitely send you a link for that, but also mention in
Okay.
the show notes for people who want to watch it. Um, yeah, so I think philosophy and I think fiction is something that resonates with you. Any kind of like a person, or like you were talking about reading about biographies, any person or personality that kind of has impacted you in a larger way that you can think of off the bat, not like really need to,
So
but
just off the bat, I read a great biography of Miles Davis,
hmm
the jazz musician. I mean, I love his music. I'm not, I mean, I love jazz, but I'm not a jazz aficionado or
right,
anything. But I think we just bought it and it was just such a fascinating, insightful read. It was really well written and it was really interesting. And I mean, I admire somebody like him because of how much practice, how much effort he had to put in to playing and learning his instrument and mastering his instrument and to then get that good.
right.
And then him and like a lot of the other musicians kind of also then descended into drugs and drug addiction
hmm
and the reasons why that happened.
Does
Yeah,
that
I mean
also talk
that.
about that?
Yeah, oh, yeah. And it goes deeply into that. I mean, it's racism. Racism in America is pretty
Mm,
much what caused that, being this incredibly like amazing person. And then experiences with police and
right.
that kind of thing. Yeah,
I'll
the
definitely
pain
look
of
up to
that.
that. I would like to read that for sure.
It's a really good read. It's
Right,
very, very nicely written.
right. Well, yeah, so talking about these philosophies and more about your take on that. Just allow me to like completely change the topic towards AI and how things are
Mm-hmm.
moving on in the fast world of technology. Are you
Mm-hmm.
like keeping pace with it? Like, are you using some of the tools? And what do you think about designing in the world of AI? How will that look like as per your view about it so far?
Um, I mean, I don't personally use it, and I can't see myself personally using it. I certainly have friends who do.
hmm
Um, I think that when AI is used to take the kind of menial labor out of things, to do really automated tasks, to hurry things along, it's great. I mean, even Chat GDP. For I have a friend who writes. She works for a boat company, and she has to write copy for boat catalogs. She just uses it because
Right,
she doesn't really have a huge amount invested in what she's writing. She just wants to kind of get the facts right, and it just sort of does it for her, and then she edits it. Um, I mean, it's. I think in terms of automation, it's a very useful tool,
hmm
and in terms of the technology of where it's going to go, of things that could be discovered through it, is also interesting. In terms of art, I just don't really have any interest when I see like a picture or something that I find really amazing, and then I see that it's AI. I just completely have no interest in it. Like if it's a beautiful house or something, I think, wow, that's amazing, and then it's not real. It
hmm
doesn't. It just doesn't have any appeal for me. I just don't care.
Right,
Um, I haven't yet seen anything that's done in AI that I've been like, wow, that's amazing. But
right,
it'll probably come.
right.
Um, mm,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely helps I mean, a lot of people to do mass production in those with those kind of tools in hand, and it helps in that. But I also have a feeling that my own thoughts are also that handcrafted will be a little more valuable even in the age of AI, because things might be a little more since there will be so much AI produced items and art and craft, I think it will come to a place where things will be more kind of appreciated when it's handcrafted by a human.
I think
And
definitely. And
yeah,
I think also the input of the handmade, whether it's painting or even like or writing or crafts, because what happens if AI just keeps referencing itself? At the moment, AI is referencing things that are human made.
yeah,
But when there's a lot of AI, it's kind of interesting the thought of what will happen when all it's doing
mhm,
is referencing other AI stuff. I just
right,
yeah, I have no idea where that's going to go. But it doesn't, at this point, at this stage of the technology, that doesn't look like a very interesting place to me without the human input in the first place for it to reference and adapt from.
right.
Um, yeah, it'll get less and less interesting without that.
Hmm. Right. Well, let's see what the future holds for art and craft in the world of AI. But I'm pretty sure
Mm,
that for now, your handcrafted fabrics are doing really well, and I'm looking forward to seeing more coming from your designs.
thank
Um,
you.
are there any parting words before we wrap up this episode and kind of call it a day?
Well, I guess I love where we went with the bees conversation, and I really hope if anything comes from anybody listening to this that they feel more inspired by bees.
Right. Well, I would definitely try to dig into that documentary and try to see if we can mention this in the
Yeah, if
show
you
notes,
can
even if
find it.
right, and then see. So you said this is a documentary by a British person
It's a
and
British, yeah,
production
guy.
and yeah.
He made it in his backyard during COVID in lockdown. He
Oh, so
had
it's a
to
very
think of a
recent
project.
documentary. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
that would
recent.
that would be quite easy for us to bring it up then, because I think you can just type and let's see if we can do this quickly here. I'm just gonna Google this. It's like a
Yeah,
documentary
let me have a look as well.
tray on bees. Was it My Garden of a Thousand Bees
It
by
might
Martin
be.
Martin Dawn was
Yes.
yeah, Iris? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
We got
that's
the
it.
name here, and it's on YouTube basically. That's I
Oh,
think
okay,
so. I
great.
think so. I think so. I can only see the trailer. No, there's a trailer, so I don't know where I can see it, but I'm sure we can check that later. So yeah, here we have the name now. My Garden of a Thousand Bees, basically. A very nice name, by the way.
Yeah.
That brings us to the end with the bee conversation, and I hope to see you again in January very soon. And uh,
Yes.
and it
Yeah,
was
that
such
would
a
be
pleasure to
great.
have you on the show. We will definitely mention all your the links for the Instagram and your account so that people can get in touch with you if they would like to. But thank you so much for your
Perfect.
time, and it's been
Oh,
a
thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. The pleasure has been all mine. It's been really enjoyable speaking to you, and I really love that the conversation really went along a lot of different, diverse, and
Yeah,
interesting paths. It's really great.
right. Thank you so much again, and yeah, see you again on the show.
Okay, thank you. All right, take care.
Yeah.